Thank you all for joining us tonight. Before we start, I do want to acknowledge all of the things that are happening in the community between the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd, and just say, I know a lot, families are dealing with a lot right now, and we really appreciate you taking some time to join us here tonight. So thank you for that. As JV said, my name is Danielle Jastro. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a licensed school counselor. I work with students last names O through Z. I'm just finishing my first year, and what a year, at Richfield High School, but I've been in the biz for about 16 years. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Lindy. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am just finishing my 20th year at Richfield High School, so it was quite a year, but we finished strong, and very, very impressed with our kids' resiliency and perseverance. And thank you to parents for helping us get education over the last 2.5 months. My last names that I work with are students whose last names begin H through N. I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
And I'm Jessica Oki, pronouns she, her, hers. This is my 18th year in the district, and I work with students' last names A through G, and I'm also happy to be here tonight, and I echo the words of my colleagues.
All right, let's get started. So tonight we're going to talk about beginning the college search, the primary factors. So we break the college search down into 2 groups. So let's get started here. First things first, JV, we do a poll, please.
Yeah. So we're going to launch a poll right now, and as attendees, I'd like you to take just a second to select the correct answer here for the poll. Where are you in your college search? All right, we're collecting responses. Looks like 20% of our attendees have voted so far. We'll keep it open for a few more seconds. 23%. There we go. Numbers are coming in. Looks like most people so far have started exploring. A few more seconds, then we'll close the poll. 85% have voted. Let your voice be heard. Let's practice for November. 88%. Great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share out the results for you. So it looks like our families are in a couple different places. 57% of our families here tonight have started exploring colleges and have found a few. 35% of the families here tonight have not started their college search. And 9% said they're done and ready to apply.
Great. Thank you for that. Thanks for sharing your progress. That gives us a sense of kind of where you are in terms of the college search. And I think regardless of where you are, you're right where you need to be. It's okay if you haven't started or if you're ready to go. And know that tonight we should have some information that will be helpful for everyone. So JV, I'm unable to advance.
And there we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm back in the saddle. Here we go. All right, so the college search. Let's go through some steps to get you started. Most of you have started, so that's wonderful. Some things to think about or reflect on as you're going through this process. This is a big one. Number one, the myth that there's one perfect school for you. Between or among the 3 of us, we've got close to 60 years of experience sitting here, and I would say this is one of the questions I get asked a lot. Is this a good school? Is this the right school for me? What school's the best for this? But remember, there's more than one. There's almost 4,000 institutions in the United States alone, and we do students who look at other countries, Canada, etc. So know that there's more than one school for you. And our job here, what we want to do is walk you through the process, to a reasonable list of 5 to 8 schools to end up applying with. Okay. We're having a little technical difficulty. There we go. So there is more than one school for you. So some tips for success to think about here. Eliminate qualifiers from your conversation. So oftentimes when families talk and when students talk, they talk about, like I said, what's a good school? What's the best school for engineering? Or I really want to do a nursing school. Where's a good school for nursing? And what's really important and what we really focus on here as we talk about college, and I should clarify, college is any sort of training or education after high school. So we are here to support students through the whole process. So our goal for your children is to really to aim for fit. So finding a school that matches your students' needs. So looking at preferences, the program, the accessibility, any sort of things that are important to you, we want to make sure that we find a school that aligns with those pieces. All right, so let's take another quick poll here.
Okay, so here's our next poll. As a family, we've discussed our child's interests and preferences for their college experience. Yes or no? Go ahead and take just a second to let us know if you've had this conversation yet. Had 21% respond. Or keep it open for another 10 seconds. As a family, we've discussed our child's interests and preferences for their college experience. Yes or no? 69, 72% have responded. 79, looks like we're right about 83%. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share out the results. So as a family, we've discussed our child's interests and preferences for their college experience. Thus, the people on the call, 88% of our families say yes, and 12% have not yet had that conversation.
Oh, that's wonderful. Glad to hear that those conversations are happening. I think one of the things we find as we talk with students and families through the process is that they may have some differences in terms of what they're looking for or what they're interested in, or there's some assumptions about what's happening and why. It's good to see that. All right, just JB.
Is it stuck?
Yep, we're stuck.
There you go.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so when we talk about interests and preferences, we group the factors into three kind of groups. So academic life, thinking about the majors at a school. It's very common. Actually, the most common major is undeclared or undecided. So you don't have to have a real strong idea of what you're interested in studying. But what you're looking for as a student, there's places that are more competitive or places that are much more collaborative and students really work together to grow and learn. Are you looking at theory? Are you looking more for practical application? What sorts of things are you looking for in the classroom? And let's acknowledge the fact that that's part of the experience. The other part is that student life. So what is the school vibe? What is the personality, if you will, of the campus? Is it religious? Is the religious affiliation very prominent on campus? Most private schools were started with a religious affiliation, and to the degree that you see that on campus is quite varied. So thinking about what you're interested in there. Are there places where you can, if you're interested in theater or music, can you participate without intending to study? Those sorts of things. So thinking about what kind of experience do you want in student life? And then the big one, right? Financial. So the true cost versus the sticker price. So what families actually end up paying versus what is listed on the college website. So what kind of scholarships are available? What are the expectations around whether your child will live at home, whether they will drive daily, all those sorts of things. So being realistic kind of about what that looks like. So one thing we like to look at here, let's see, thank you. How this can show up for students and families. So thinking about something like a large lecture-based class. So what is the academic vibe? The student might be thinking, hey, the instructor might not notice if I miss a day, so that might be okay. And the parent might be thinking, oh, larger classes, maybe that means it's going to have cheaper tuition versus the private schools that typically have much smaller classes. Thinking about location, looking at a school that might be farther from home, students might be thinking, freedom, this is when I get to kind of spread my wings and do what I want to do. And parents might be considering the cost to get back and forth between campus. Is it a car ride? Can you get them on a bus for a day, or is that every time they come home you're looking at airfare? And then the cost. Depending on where your student is in this process, they have a real different understanding of how those numbers kind of add up over time. So the student might be thinking nobody really ever pays the sticker price, so it's, you know, it's less of a big deal. Whereas parents would be a little shocked to say that's the tuition or the cost per year. So really having those conversations and understanding, helping your child to understand where your kind of parameters are and what your expectations for them are, and understanding where they're coming from can save a lot of stress and anxiety kind of from the beginning. All right, lost. Here we go. Next, please. Thank you. All right, so many of you have already started this process. That's wonderful. You know, as we started to think about what does this mean, what does this global pandemic mean for our students, and how has it impacted them with ACT testing and the college search process, etc. This is one where we actually might end up okay in terms of what's going on. So a lot of colleges in response to the pandemic have really started pushing and rolling out virtual resources for students. So their virtual tours, their times you can set up meetings to meet with admission reps, all of those things are now available, which makes it actually that you can be visiting with colleges maybe that you couldn't get to otherwise because of the travel cost. There's a lot of online resources available for you. We use a tool called Naviance, and if your student's not on that yet or not spending a lot of time, we're going to get them on there. That's a very important tool for us. But there's Princeton Review, College Board. It's important to look at resources that might not be the official college resources. So looking at the student-led newspaper, or getting to some of the things that are put out by students about how they feel about their experience. And then don't forget, in front of you is a whole team of people who are here to support you. So we've been working with colleges, we've been talking with colleges, we're here as a resource. We're not sure what our college rep visits will look like. In the past, obviously, they've come to the school to meet with us. We're starting that conversation about, you know, depending on what it looks like, those may be virtual meetings. So those are places where you can really continue to get information. Next, please. The idea as you go through this is really that you're starting your broad search. So I will say, in my experience, I had 1 year where I started with a student, working with a student whose list had 89 colleges on it. And I wasn't sure where to begin. As a counselor who spent a lot of time talking to colleges and researching those sorts of things, it was overwhelming for me. So at this point, you know, if you start looking at 20 to 25 schools where you really start to spend a little bit more time, I'd encourage you to think about where you're getting those schools from. A lot of times it's the list that, you know, my friend heard about, or I saw this on a bulletin board or a billboard, or you know, I know somebody who goes there. Think about, again, the fit. It's really important about what works for you. Ultimately, what we want you to do is add those colleges to your colleges I'm thinking about list in Naviance. This really allows us to funnel information to you and to let you know when the college reps are coming, if there's scholarships or other opportunities that are specific to those institutions. So really updating that list is hugely important. There's a bunch of tools on Naviance that you can use. A lot of times I have students who tell me they want to be a doctor or a lawyer. Keep in mind you're looking for your first degree at this point, so it might be a biology degree or a political science degree or what have you. So, you know, focus on that first education or that first degree first. And then please do not rule out schools based on cost at this point. Until we actually go through the financial aid process and do the FAFSA or the DREAM Act and go through and see what's available for students, we really don't know what the cost will be for you. So being inclusive of all the opportunities is really important. Cost more, absolutely, but they also have a lot more resources to give, so being aware of that. And there are tools on college websites, the net price calculators. The government has a FAFSA estimator where you can start to see kind of what those numbers might shake out to be. But at this point, you really want to be more inclusive than not. And then as you go through and continue to research and continue to explore, hopefully by the fall of your senior year, you've 5 to 8 solid colleges that you're really excited about attending and that you can see yourself on campus. Right, let's see if mine's working there. Next, please. There we go, thank you. All right, Miss Lindy.
All right, so I'm going to take the few slides just about admissions in general. We're going to start with a few pointers on, oh, I can't advance either, so you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So two-year colleges, and these would be any type of community college, technical college. So when we say two-year colleges in general, they could be up to 2 years or less than 2 years. The admission requirements are different from that of four-year colleges and universities because it's what's considered open admission. So what open admission means is that a student applies, they have their high school diploma, and they can supply test scores. Test scores are not absolutely required. But what's nice about test scores, and we do give every student the ACT at Richfield High School. Every junior student has the opportunity to take the ACT in the spring of their junior year. So even though they would be admitted to a two-year college without test scores, we do send those test scores because the way those are used is it does help the students be appropriately placed in their courses once they're admitted. So the two general routes, when you think of community college or technical college, some schools, some students go for a career program. For instance, at a school like Hennepin Technical College, if they'd want to go to into a career as an electrician or a plumber or HVAC, something like that, and then they'd go right into the workforce, or they would keep attending. They do a 2+2 program where they complete their program concentration. A lot of times kids refer to it as generals, doing their generals, and then they would transfer on to a four-year college or university to then complete their remaining 2 years. The next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about something called the Accuplacer. And the Accuplacer is a standardized assessment. It's used by two-year colleges to determine course placement for students. So as I mentioned in the earlier slide, we will send ACT scores to schools that students have taken. And based on the ACT score, some students would not have to take an Accuplacer, but sometimes we do have students who do need to rely on that Accuplacer for course placement because their ACT scores don't necessarily make the minimums. So once a student has completed Accuplacer, it's in 3 sections. It's untimed. It's a computer-based test. It's going to measure reading, writing, and math skills. And the placement levels that would come out of the Accuplacer, students would either be considered college ready, where they're placed into the courses. They're typically 1,000 level courses and higher. They might be almost college ready, meaning they would have to go into developmental courses to get them ready to go to 1,000 level. And then sometimes we have students who, and this is probably most typical of newer to country students whose maybe first language is not English, that they would qualify for adult basic education, which means they wouldn't quite ready to be starting their college courses yet, but we would refer them, or the college would refer them to get them college ready and take some courses. So as I mentioned before, our juniors all take the ACT. They all are going to have an ACT score. So instead of Accuplacer, what that would look like, if their sub-scores, whether they'd be in their reading sub-score, their English sub-score, their math sub-score, there's also science and writing. Sometimes students might test out in their English, for instance, but then maybe they would take just the Accuplacer for math, etc. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It can be in each area. There are Accuplacer practice websites, and what we've found through the years is kids maybe don't do the practice. They go in kind of cold to the Accuplacer, thinking that it's untimed, thinking that it's computer-based, they can take their time, they can walk through it. But it's really part of that assessment is understanding what you're going to be asked, what the format is going to be. So practice for the Accuplacer is encouraged for students who are going to be taking that. There are a few changes with Accuplacer. I guess I'll just touch on that with the COVID pandemic right now. Schools like Normandale, for instance, are not in-place testing. So the Accuplacer has been put on hold. It's our understanding, we don't have details, but it's our understanding that I believe they are trying to get something in place for students to be able to remotely online take the Accuplacer, but we don't have that information at this point. And the next slide is going to focus more on four-year college admission. It is more complicated. It's not necessarily more hard to understand, it's just more complicated. So the rest of the presentation will look at four-year admission. So the Office of Admission at four-year schools, they are not the Office of Denial, they are the Office of Admission. We want to keep it in a positive, optimistic spin, of course. So from the side of the Office of Admission, they are looking to admit students to enroll a strong class, to enroll a strong first-year class. They want to enroll well-rounded, active students. They want to enroll students who are on track to be academically successful and who will contribute to their campus. So not only are they going to be looking at academic promise, they are also looking holistically. Many of the four-year schools admit what they call holistically. So in different from the two-year colleges are looking for diploma and some test scores for placement. Four-year college and universities are looking for, yes, they definitely want an academic fit, but they want a whole student fit, so the holistic admission. So what we're focusing on today are the primary factors, and I will tell you primary factors are mostly the academic factors. The secondary factors, which we will be doing a presentation, that'll be posted on our website subsequent to this one. But the primary factors are more academic, volunteer work, if students have been active in clubs, if they've been active in theater, if they've been active in music, if they've been active in sports, things like that. That's what's called holistic admission, where they're looking at the whole student. So a couple more things to focus on. The primary factors, it's pretty tangible. It's the GPA, grade point average. And what that takes into consideration is the cumulative grade point average. So it's students from 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade, their schoolwork. And if they've taken honors classes, if they've taken regular classes but done well, all of those into consideration. Four-year colleges will also look for an ACT or an SAT, and Mrs. Oki's going to talk about ACT, SAT in a little while. And then also numbers again, class rank. So they're going to look at a class percentile. They're going to look at how the student compares, of course, to their classmates. So when you look at the overall primary factors in numbers, 60 to 65% of the admission decision will fall on these primary factors. They're concrete, and it's called their academic profile. So again, it's not the end all be all of what a student would need to get into college and be admitted to the colleges they want, but it does provide for a concrete way of comparing. And Danielle's going to do the next few. Sorry.
Yep. So understanding how you kind of stack up to what a typical admitted student looks like will really help you to balance out your list. So as I mentioned, 5 to 8 colleges, 6 to 9 colleges is a reasonable number. Some will have more, some will have less. But what we want to really make sure is 2 things. One, that all the colleges that are on your list are colleges you're excited about and would be excited to attend. And 2, that there are schools where you definitely have some options and some likelihood of being admitted. So we kind of break down those colleges, or we'll look at your college list in 3 kind of chunks. The first one is likely to be admitted. So your profile is significantly stronger than the typical admitted student. So you're likely to get in. And remember that profile, those are those concrete numbers: test scores, GPA, class rank. A target school is a school where you look pretty much like the typical admitted student. Your numbers are right within their mid 50th percentile. And then a difficult school is a school where your numbers are just not as strong, and you're less likely to be accepted. Now, the list kind of looks different based on your own profile, which is why we kind of talk through this. There are some schools I think we can agree who have admission or acceptance rates of 7% or 6% that really are selective across the board. So even if your numbers fall in exactly where they are, there are some schools that we would consider difficult regardless of what your profile looks like. All right, next one. And it's good to have this information, but it's important to understand, so where do you find that? How do I know? What does that look like? So 2 pieces of information. One, colleges will report out what their typical admitted student looks like. They usually report it in the mid 50th percentile range. And then you can also access the admission history from Richfield High School students, which is important. So it's apples to oranges, but it's helpful to have both sets of information. So from your Naviance account, you can go into, if you're looking through the colleges I'm thinking about, or if you go into a college, there's something called a scattergram on there that can help you to understand how you fit into the profile. So this is a lot, and it's usually, it's definitely a lot easier to present this in person, because then I can see your responses of whether or not this makes sense, but hopefully you bear with me here. So across the bottom, you'll see the legend there. There is a little box. Once a student has both a GPA and a test score in the Naviance system, they will appear on these scattergrams. So you'll see where they plot out with a little blue circle. And I've tried to highlight that there in the middle. Green checks means accepted, red X's mean denied, and the purple circles are waitlisted or unknowns. So we collect this information at the end of the school year. We ask our students to give us the outcomes. So admittedly, this data is reported by students, but students also use this data. So they are likely to, they want to support and help the younger students. So they report back accurately for the most part. There's always 1 or 2 weird ones in there, but overall, as we start to look at trends, you can really kind of see what those look like. The dashed lines, they're highlighted, represent the averages. So the column, the y-axis is the GPA, and the bottom, the x-axis, is the ACT score. So for our student profile, they have a 3.016 GPA with a 20 ACT. You can see where they plot. The scattergram here is from admission history from Mankato. So our students from Richfield High School have an average acceptance, or students who are accepted have an average of 21 on the ACT and a 3.36 on the GPA. Of a GPA. So you can kind of see what that looks like. Okay. Well, that's a lot, but let's take a look one more. What this kind of means with safe or likely target and difficult. So where you fall, where you plot on this scattergram helps you to understand what type of school this would be for you. So if you're plotting right in the middle, right where those two lines meet, right around those averages, this is a target. You're a target school for you. You're likely, or you have a 50 to 60% chance of being accepted here. You look like the typical student. If you are plotting to the left of those averages, your numbers aren't as strong as the typically admitted student. That school is going to be more difficult for you to be admitted into. And then if you're plotting to the right, where your numbers are stronger than who they typically admit, that will be a likely school where your odds or your likelihood of admission will be really strong. Now, I always have kids ask me, what do you think, what are the odds are? And I tell them, I'm not a bookie. I don't know what your odds are, but this is kind of what we can look at to get a sense of where those, where their list falls or where the colleges fall for the likely target and difficult. All right, and we'll take a look at one more here on the next slide. There we go. And this next one is the University of Minnesota. So the University of Minnesota is one of the schools where we send most of it's one of the schools that gets most of our applications. So many of our seniors every year apply to this institution. So you can see here the numbers look a little bit different. So we still have the same student profile, the 3.016 GPA, a 20 ACT, but now at the U of M, you can see that the average ACT score is a 26, and the average GPA of the students from Richfield who are admitted is probably a 4 point something. So it's a little bit higher. So this target looks a little bit different here. If you are falling, where a student is plotting down here, the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus is going to be more difficult for you to get into. If you're plotting out here, it's going to be more of a likelihood. University of Minnesota and University of Wisconsin-Madison, those are two schools that I try not to count as for sures for any student, regardless of their number, and largely because of the large amounts of student applications that those institutions are receiving, 35 to 50,000 applications. All right. So I think we're going to pause here briefly and just do a quick check, JV, with any questions that we're seeing.
We do have some questions. The first one, we had some side conversation here about FAFSA, and someone would like to know when the FAFSA deadline is and if that's coming up in June. Could you talk a little bit about that, or is that coming up later in the presentation?
It is not coming up later. We can address that right now. So the FAFSA deadline is a little different. So for our current juniors who are now seniors, their application for the FAFSA will open on October 1st. So the earliest that they can access the application, because they'll be applying for the year that they intend to use it. So they'll be applying for the 2021 school year, 21-22. Sorry, 21-22 school year. That will be open for them on October 1st. For our seniors who we just graduated, they actually can continue to file the FAFSA, I think, all the way up until it's like 2 weeks before the end of the semester. Now, the caution with that is think of colleges having kind of a pot of money that they set to the side. And as more applications come in and students are admitted and financial aid packages are created, that pot of money gets smaller. So when we talk about the FAFSA, we really encourage families to apply sooner rather than later. So hopefully that answers that question there.
Thank you.
I'll let my colleagues jump in if there's anything I'm missing.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question. And just a reminder for all the attendees, we will post all of the questions that were asked as well as the answers tomorrow, and that will be linked to you in the email that you receive with the video of the webinar, so that we can even kind of get some more details for you in those answers. The next question, what if the ACT does not reflect all of the A's in the student's coursework, including college and the schools and AP?
I can take that. That's a great question. Depending on which schools that the student is interested in and applying to, a number of schools are test optional, meaning colleges aren't even looking at an ACT score at admission time. Gustavus is one that comes to mind. They are a test optional school, and we're seeing a few more of those through the years. But typically colleges use the ACT as one measurement. My experience has been that student transcripts, strength of schedule, meaning CIS classes, strength of schedule tends to hold more weight in an admission process than an ACT score. So I'm not saying the ACT or other standardized test is not taken into consideration. It's part of that academic profile. It's part of those concrete numbers. But the strength of schedule, the 4 years of math, the 4 years of science, the years of language study. I know we get that often with students who are in our DLI program are worried that they don't have language on their transcript, but actually the fact that they're bilingual overrides any learned language in high school. So that actually has been very much a strength. So ACT is a measurement, but colleges realize kids, sometimes they're not good test takers. Sometimes that's a measurement of that day and time that they took that exam. And what we're seeing with the COVID pandemic, there are some students that may not get a chance to take a second ACT at this point, very easily at least, because we don't know what in-person testing is going to look like. We don't know if ACT is going to be introducing some online options. And colleges and universities are very much recognizing that. They very much are recognizing that students and test opportunities have become much more limited. Jess or Danielle, if you wanted to add in.
Well, it's going to be in the slides coming up.
Yep, Jess will
Yes.
have that coming up.
Okay. Another question, how much of the PSEO credits transfer with students to college? Is it 100%?
That's a good question. It depends on the college that they're transferring to. So ultimately, the college that receives those credits gets to determine how those colleges or how those credits come into their system. So they might count towards elective credits. They might count towards credits towards the actual specific major. I've worked with students where if the class was counted towards a high school graduation requirement, then the college would not give them credit for it because they didn't want them double dipping in that way. So ultimately it's hard, but this is one that says it depends, and it really depends on the institution that the student ends up attending. Sarah, Jess?
But just so you know, like CIS credits are University of Minnesota credits. So if a student goes to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, Duluth, Rochester, Crookston, any of the University of Minnesota campuses, those are credit for credit. Those are 100%. We have a lot of students because of proximity who complete PSEO courses at Normandale. Within the Minnesota State College University system, Bemidji, Mankato, Winona, St. Cloud, those are 100% transfer as well. Private schools and out-of-state schools, that is where students want to be talking to the college, the receiving college, because they make the final decision whether credits transfer or not.
Great, let's just take one or two more questions here, and then we'll get back into the presentation and hold more questions till the end. But here, there's a couple that reflect what we were just talking about. If it is highly likely for you to get accepted into the school of your choice, should you still apply to more than one school?
That's a good question. I think with everything that's going on, it's a worthwhile thing to consider other options, depending on the school that we're talking about, and the financial aid package and those opportunities, maybe or maybe not. I would encourage students to explore multiple, but it's really going to be kind of a student by student conversation about what makes the most sense for them. I hate to put all my pull, eggs in one basket or assume that this is what's going to happen and then have there be kind of a change somewhere midstream. So I would encourage students who are looking at a college to consider multiple. Now, the exception to that is if you're talking about Normandale, because for sure you want to do a program, a career focused program, or for sure that you're looking to start at a 2-year and transfer. That's different. You're accepted by virtue of graduating from high school. So that one, I wouldn't say necessarily that you'd have to apply, but I'm a big fan of options. So I like to keep options open.
One last question for this section. Do parents have access to a Naviance account?
Yes.
Okay. We'll provide details on how to get access to that when we send out that information later. All right, let's get back to the presentation and we can revisit questions again later.
All right, I'm going to talk about ACT and SAT college admissions testing. Sarah talked about it a little bit, but I'm going to go into a little more detail, and I can't advance the slide either. Okay, so the two common college admissions tests are the ACT and the SAT. Reasons for taking an entrance exam is, of course, for admission is the big primary reason. Many four-year colleges will take a look at that score as part of their application process. As Sarah mentioned, there are some test optional schools, but largely four-year colleges require a test score. In many cases, the score is used to supplement what they're seeing on the rest of the student's application. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the academic record like Sarah talked about. A second reason is for scholarship money. Many colleges will have an academic equation where they'll look at your GPA and ACT and determine some supplementary money, some academic merit scholarship based on those numbers. For example, I was looking at Hamlin's net price calculator this afternoon, and the difference for a student with a 3.5 GPA between a 19 ACT and a 21 ACT, the difference was $4,000 in merit scholarship. So it is worth taking a look at those net price calculators, looking and see what kinds of things you can get with different ACT scores, and determining if a retest is a good option for a student. And then thirdly, they use ACT or SAT scores sometimes in the selection of students for specific programming. If they have honors programming or other types of things like that, the ACT can be a part of that placement. All right. And a lot of times parents, we sometimes hear parents using the two interchangeably. They are two distinct different tests. All colleges and universities will accept either one. There are a few waivers available for both. And we really don't recommend students taking both. Occasionally a student might, but it's really best to put the focus on taking one of the tests. And since all of our students are given the opportunity to take the ACT during the school day, most of our students choose that option. In any given year, I might have total in a class fewer than 5 students who choose to take the SAT at Richfield. ACT is just the more common option. We talk about containing the testing process, and when we talk about that, we're trying to say, yes, it's important, but don't let it be all-consuming. It is important, but not enough to be afraid or stressed out about. We encourage students to prepare for it. We did activities with them throughout the junior year in their advisory course to give them some prep work, and we gave them the opportunity in February to take it. We frequently recommend a repeat. Their options right now are limited with the COVID pandemic. We'll see more in the fall if their options become wider. So there's some things there that are unpredictable. But take the test and then get on with other things, focusing on academics. And then the last point on the slide talks about sending scores to colleges. Sometimes students are resistant or hesitant to send the scores to a school when they're signing up. But it's important to know the college is always going to use scores to the student's advantage. It's not like a school is going to get multiple score reports for a student and say, well, they scored lower once, so let's take a look at that. No, they're always going to look at their highest score when they're considering them for admission or programming or scholarship. Next. You may have heard the term super scoring. Some schools use this, not many, and NCAA also uses this. A super scoring is when they take the different parts of the test. There's 4 subtests plus the writing test, and each subtest gets its own score. And if you take the test multiple times, you might score your highest on English on one test, but the highest in reading on another test. So they'll take the highest sub-score from each test and add those up, and that's a super score. So some schools use that, some do not. So you would have to check with the college or university that you're considering to see if they do super scoring. More colleges might move towards that because ACT is now making a change where a student on their retest can choose to do the retest in just one subject area rather than taking the whole ACT over again. And that's going to be new starting in the fall. And that will also vary based on test center. Not all test centers will give that option. So those are some changes that might come out for colleges as the testing agency makes changes. There was one more thing on that last slide. I wanted to highlight again the test optional portion that Ms. Lindy talked about, what Sarah talked about, that some schools do not require the ACT or any college admissions test. And with the COVID pandemic, some colleges are becoming temporarily test optional. And those things are ever changing and ever updating as the situation changes, but it's an important thing to look at. And test optional doesn't mean that they won't look at your ACT score. If you have a great ACT score, you can send it, but you don't have to. If you're have a strong academic record and you don't have a great ACT score or SAT score, you don't have to submit a score for those test optional organizations. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about this. Colleges are changing a lot of things in, it's a fluid situation, not only with testing, but with other things, looking at transcripts. Previously, if they saw a grade of a P on a transcript, it might mean something significantly different than what it would mean in this era of grading, where Ps are now much more common in multiple schools. So colleges are flexible in looking at testing and looking at transcripts and things like that. So it's okay. Everything will be okay. So thinking about timeline and when to start this whole process. So we're encouraging students now to be doing research, looking at those college visits virtually, looking at programs that colleges have to offer that they might be interested in. And students can also over the summer be looking at their some of their application materials, like the essays. If they have looked at, okay, I have these 3 colleges I want to apply to, they've looked at the application process on those colleges' websites and they see an essay topic, they can start writing that essay, start getting some ideas down. They can start getting their activities resume organized so that they have all of those things put together. They won't be actually applying over the summer, but they can get those materials ready. And then in the fall, when we return to school or when school resumes, be it however it is, we will have workshops for them and we will help them with understanding the processes of getting the application materials all together. Colleges don't typically begin reviewing applications until after September 15th anyway. And we as a school won't have our documents ready to send in terms of transcripts and such because of enrollment until late September. So families can be getting materials ready in terms of essays, activities, resumes, but the actual submission of all of the application materials won't take place until later in September. And now we can take questions and yeah, we can take some more questions.
Well, we definitely have some more questions, so let's do it. So someone wanted some clarification on the the visual that was showed earlier for acceptance into the University of Minnesota, this scattergram or whatever that was called, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
They wanted clarification. It says the average, did you say the average GPA for U of M was 4 out of 4?
So that data was pulled specifically on Richfield High School students that applied there. It's not like a nationwide or a statewide average. And we are on a 4-point scale, but we have many students who have higher than a 4.0 because of the weighted grading. So yeah, the average Richfield High School student that was accepted was right around a 4.0.
Next question. Do you have to know what college you are attending before completing the FAFSA?
No.
Nope.
When you complete the FAFSA, they've got room for you to enter several colleges and have your financial aid report sent to those institutions.
Next question. Is there a way to search for schools that accept dual credit / PSEO on Naviance?
Ooh, I don't know that there is a way to search for that specifically on Naviance. I think one of the things that I would encourage you to look at is some of those bigger factors when we talk about fit, and really start to think about what the experience is going to look like, and what the academic and the student life will look like on campus. And then once you have that list of schools that you're really interested in, is to start to take that question and kind of ask that of each of those schools. Many schools will put out they review or receive AP scores or PSEO or those sorts of things right on their website, so you can check and see if they have that. But I think step one is really to look at and determine that list of colleges that you're likely going to be applying to, and then follow up with those schools specifically.
Next question. Due to COVID-19, is the ACT test still happening this summer?
We are not hosting it at Richfield. I don't know if there are other test centers in the state that are open.
The ACT website would have the most up-to-date information.
The ACT website? Okay, great. We'll
Yes.
provide a link to that too with our resources later. Is the ACT required if you've been doing 2 years of PSEO and should have an associate's degree by the time you graduate?
If a student has an associate's degree by the time, they actually would be applying to the college as a transfer student. And so I would encourage a conversation you could start a conversation with us, with the counselor, and then we'd be looking at specifically how many credits, and then what the college, we would walk you through that application, because it would look, yes, they would maybe still want to see an ACT score, but again, it completely depends on the situation. So that would be a good conversation to have.
And an ACT still could be considered for scholarship.
Great. Next question. What if your child had a really bad 10th grade year but did well every other year?
Yep, life happens. So students experience all kinds of situations, and we're sorry that was their experience, and colleges will understand that. So I think one of the things to know is there's usually on applications, whether as part of the application itself, or they usually have an open-ended question that's like, is there anything more we need to know? That's a place where you can share that information. You can talk with your counselor. We can address that as well, and talk about how best to share that information. It's really up to the child and the family about how they want to broach that. I think the biggest thing to focus on, though, is that upward trend. Just get that sometimes students, when they transfer to high school, that's a big change, or life happens, or there's a family change, or what have you. All those pieces can contribute to student success in school, and they get that. They want to understand what they're looking at on the transcript, and they want to see that student bounce back and recover and start to continue to build. So that positive upward trend is really important.
Great, thank you. Next question, could you talk a little bit about students in special education and how special ed students do in college, or what kind of supports colleges might have for them?
Yeah, we encourage students to connect right away with the Students with Disabilities office when they get to college. They can bring in their documentation from high school, even though their IEP doesn't like transfer over. It's not like it's exactly the same. They can use that as a starting point to start the conversation in terms of this is This is what my disability is. This is the help that I received in high school, and then the college can talk through with them. These are the types of services you can get here and how we can help you with reaching your academic goals.
And I believe,
one of the things I'd like to add to that though, or in addition, is that a lot of times you'll see listed on college websites that they have the disability center, or they have writing tutors or what the case may be. And what's really important is to talk with your student and to reflect on what needs your student will have within that situation, and to determine if what's available to you is going to meet those needs for students. So yeah, they may have writing support or a math center on campus, but is that available to everybody? Is there an additional cost to those things? And really figuring out, with understanding your student and where they're at in their process, what level of support do they need, and is that going to be available to them on that campus?
and I would just echo, for students with 504 accommodation plans, colleges also recognize 504 accommodation plans through the Students with Disabilities Office.
Great, we'll just take a couple more here because I know it's getting close to 7 o'clock. Does Richfield High School administer the SAT at school, or is it just the ACT?
Just the ACT.
Next question, what type of essay do students have to write for their college applications?
Great question. Really, this is where you go back to the college. There's something called the Common Application, which is one application for about 1,000 or so, 900 or so schools. And they have 7 essay prompts that they make available. So that would be a good place to kind of look and see what kind of essay questions are out there. And what you find is typically there's a variation of something of those. One other common question that you see a lot is why X, why the University of Minnesota, why Madison, why Eau Claire, and really starting to think about what is it about that campus that is appealing to your child. And one thing to do as you're going and reviewing those things, if you can just switch out names of colleges and it doesn't change the meeting, you're probably not digging deep enough in terms of why that college. So you got to check with each institution individually, but there's a couple of places where you can go to see some of those examples.
Yeah. And it's important to note, not all colleges will require an essay as part of their application process.
And we're happy to help with rough drafts and editing too.
A follow-up question related to essays. How much time should a student spend on their essays, and should they have more than one prepared?
Again, I think I'd go back to, there's a number of schools that don't require any writing sample. So I guess, and some of the schools are going to be very specific in their writing prompts. So how much time is probably relative to the competitiveness of the school, the competitiveness of what the student is bringing to campus. You know, what are their numbers? I guess right now, jotting down some ideas for the students who really know what schools they're interested in. What are they going to bring to the school? Colleges want to know what a kid's going to bring to the campus to make the campus a better place as well. I would think, especially this summer, jotting down some ideas, outlining some ideas, looking at those prompts, and those are things that we can really assist with as well this fall.
I would echo and say that making sure you're actually answering the question. So that's one of the things that I've seen in supporting students in working through their essays. What is the question? I've worked with students where we've talked about it first and had them give me the 2 or 3 key points that I as a reader need to come away with, so that they know that those are the pieces coming in. And to Sarah's point, it really depends on the kid and the type of institution they're applying to. So I think the most important thing now is to do your research and figure out which colleges, if the colleges you're interested in actually require an essay or a statement, what is that essay and statement, and then starting to kind of build that out from there.
Great. Okay, we'll take one last question here tonight because it's 7 o'clock and we need to wrap it up. But I will echo that sometime tomorrow you will receive, all the participants here will receive an email with a link to the video, the Q&A. So if we didn't get to your question, it will be answered in the Q&A, and a form to ask more questions. So if you think of a question later tonight that you didn't get a chance to ask, you'll still be able to do that. So definitely check your email sometime tomorrow. It'll probably be later in the day. It'll take some time to pull all this together. But don't be discouraged if we didn't get your question tonight. So here's the last one. A lot of schools are asking for recommendation letters from high school teachers. What should the full-time PSEO students do if they are full-time PSEO both junior and senior years? Who should they have write their letters if they haven't been in the high school classroom?
It again will depend on what type of letter. Some of the schools require a letter from a core academic area. And I've had students, PSEO students, go back to their professors at the college and have to ask for letters.
Yeah, teacher letters are really about what's happening in the classroom. So if they haven't been a student with us in the classroom, it's going to be really hard for our teachers to respond to that, especially because we're looking for student growth over those last couple of years. So they'll work with those professors. And then we can help support them through the process about how to submit those, or if there's questions about how to make the actual logistics work.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you very much to all of our counselors tonight for putting this together. And we wish everyone a good evening and check your email tomorrow. Thank you.
Do we have to leave this one to go to the Spanish one?
I think so. Should we leave
Okay.
this?
I don't know how to leave.
I know. Well, there's another little box that pops up. It says quit. I've lost my mouse.
Oh, here we go.